and welcome to this presentation on Precinct and Relationship Management. I'm Jen Rieger-Murphy, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Ridley Democratic Committee and Committee Person for Ward 6, Precinct 1. I've worked in precinct management for 4 years and will include my experiences and those of fellow committee members, some of whom have been involved for many, many years. Let's get started. So today's objectives, our goals will be to learn more about the precincts in Ridley Township, to understand our roles as committee people in managing and leading our precinct. We'll discuss what types of activities we can do in our precincts to connect with voters. We'll look at tools that provide us with data, and we will leave you with the goal of creating your plan. Today's agenda will be reviewing the Ridley Dems mission and values and discussing precinct and township demographics. We will revisit committee member responsibilities, which focus largely on managing one's precinct. And we will go through an exercise on how you can better get acquainted with your precinct demographics. We'll discuss how a growth mindset and strategy can help us build our community of voters. And we'll wrap up with some resources, considerations, and next steps. Here's the mission statement of the Ridley Democratic Committee. Our committee goal is always to be working to elect Democrats at every level of government. Our work is not seasonal, although it does ramp up in the months leading to the November and May elections. In precinct management, we should be thinking about building our party every single day. Rome was certainly not built in a day, and we are definitely trying to build Rome here. Here are the values of the Ridley Democratic Committee. Committee members are elected and appointed officials representing the smallest political unit in the country, the precinct. We not only come to meetings for ourselves, we're representing our neighbors' interests, and we're responsible to share party news with them and get as many people involved as possible. We aim towards the same goal, which is to elect Democrats at every level. And here we have our aspirational code of conduct. First and foremost, we give people the benefit of the doubt. We agree that civil disagreement is healthy. We care for each other as people, and we are the face of the Ridley Democrats and Democratic Party. This is the current listing of the fellow committee members in Ridley Township. We have 27 members currently, including our ex officio member and current state representative, Dave DeLoso. Some members are brand new, others are serving a second 4-year term, and others have been involved in the committee and Democratic Party for decades. We have people with lots of different experiences and perspectives to be shared in this group. Most of our members listed an interest in volunteering and service when they ran for committee person. Several also expressed an interest in running for office one day. And we have a lot of different skill sets represented here, ranging from hospitality, communications, organizing, social media, volunteer management, web design, and human resources. And all of these skills can be used in precinct management. Another survey response is shared here to show what type of work our committee members are interested in. Election Day topped them all, and this is great news because that's what we're all working towards, to elect Democrats. Election Day is our game day. We need all members possible to help us get voters to the polls. Literature drops and other important activities in community engagement ranked high, and these are all components of precinct management as well. So let's look at Ridley Township demographics. Ridley Township is made of 9 wards and 20 precincts. Some of these precincts are represented by 1 committee person, though most precincts have 2 reps. Ward 6, Precinct 1, which is where I'm a committee member, we gained 2 additional committee people this year, netting 3 overall. Every precinct is eligible to have 2 elected and 2 appointed committee people. If you're out meeting voters and someone strikes you as a good fit for committee, definitely let us know. Overall, we have about 7,800 Democrats in these 20 precincts and almost 2,600 who have no party affiliation. So this would include your independents, Green Party members, and libertarians. And while we are outnumbered by Republicans on paper, our work has turned out the vote and victory for Democrats at the county, state, and federal levels. This map, created by our committee person, Meg, shows all precincts in Ridley and voter registration. You can see that in 1-1, 2-2, and 7-2, we have an advantage in registration. But it's very important to note that that means nothing if they don't come out to vote. There are 2 green tacks, 1 in 5-2 and 4-2. These precincts outnumber Republicans if you include independents. The rest are Republican-heavy precincts. However, turning out Dems and Dem-leaning independents is important. All of these precincts have the same representatives for Congress and state Senate. They do vary in state House leadership. Leanne Kruger, if reelected, will represent 1-1, 1-3, all of Ward 2, 5-1, and all of Ward 7. Dave DeLoso, if reelected, will represent the rest of our Ridley precincts. We covered this slide in our committee person training, so this may be familiar to some of you, but now is a good time to revisit it. Our goal as committee people is to represent the party and always be connecting with voters, finding volunteers and donors and new committee people or supporters who can help advance our cause. We do this in several ways. One, by being a visible Democrat, and this can take many forms. This could include attending school board meetings, getting involved in attending commissioner meetings, staying on top of county council meetings to know what's being discussed there. You could get involved at the community level and be the eyes and ears of the party. So we have a couple stories to get you thinking about this. I work with a colleague on election day who invited me to help plan the 4th of July parade in our township. And while this was fulfilling on many levels, one of the byproducts was actually meeting people after the Roe v. Wade decision and learning that many independents and Republicans, and as well as Democrats, were very upset by that ruling. So it was offering me this opportunity to identify people in my precinct who would likely turn out to vote for Democrats in this upcoming election. We have a member of Rose Valley who goes to her community pool and has connected with some people on different topics related to the election. You may be interested in Little League. Maybe you have children or a niece or nephew that plays baseball, and you could get involved that way. It's always just nice to be thinking about ways that you can connect with your neighbors and potentially voters. And lastly, after the Roe decision was handed down, I was shopping in our grocery store and was wearing a shirt that definitely showed how I felt about the situation. And somebody in the Acme actually stopped me and we started talking about my shirt, and she ended up coming to some of our Ridley Democratic meetings. So there's always different ways that you can be connecting with people and being a visible Democrat. Our other goals are to educate voters and neighbors on issues that they care about and to remind people of the upcoming election. More formally, our role involves door knocking for candidates and sometimes even with them. As you can see in this picture, we have Congresswoman Mary Gay Scanlon, State Representative Leanne Kruger, and State Senator Tim Carney, who recently did a canvass with our Ridley Democratic Committee. You also want to be considering calling voters, sending notes or connecting via email or Facebook. During election seasons, we circulate petitions to get candidates on the ballot. As you see there, I'm photographed with Dave DeLoso getting signatures for him to be on the ballot. A good goal in your relationship building would be to have an idea of all the people that you could count on to sign such petitions, to know who wants to volunteer. Just keep in mind that relationships do take time to build. So, go easy on yourself when you're starting out. But the sooner you start, the better. Now is really a good time to be engaging with people, especially as many people are focused on what's happening in our country with reproductive rights and saving our democracy, and the list goes on. Other ways to grow the party involve noticing house sales and following up with new residents that move in, reaching out to residents turning 18 or who are not registered to vote, taking note of lawn signs and flags that are on people's lawns, signs like Vote Democrat or Hate Has No Home or Black Lives Matter. Maybe steer clear of the Let's Go Brandon lawn signs. When you're out talking to a captive audience, just be remembering to promote our monthly meetings, invite them to volunteer or donate, and talk about our candidates and representatives. One of your tasks right now will be to think about how you want to reach voters in your precinct. Some members may not be able to go door to door, or they may not feel comfortable doing it. If that's the case, would going with someone possibly help? Or maybe you'll reach out to voters by mail or phone. Some of our committee people do regular mailings throughout the year or leading up to election day. I tend to do one mailing before each November election, and this year I decided to do one before the May primary. That's how I met Meg, who is now one of our fabulous committee people in 6-1. Letters definitely help and produce amazing results. You'll likely even see voters come to polls with your letters if they include polling information and candidate information. If you have a written letter for your precinct, you can always share it with me or Bella, who is our chair, so that we can share with the group. And we do have sample letters already available as well. So now that we've talked a little bit about what precinct management looks like and things to consider when creating your outreach plan, we'll look at who is actually in your precinct. This photo is taken from Stephen Colbert's The Colbert Report. He had a segment called Better Know a District, which I highly recommend checking out. We are tasked with better knowing our precinct. I created a worksheet to accompany this training, and you can use it later to track your own precinct demographics. To complete this activity, you'll need access to Vote Builder. If you still need access, you can just contact our chair, Bella, and we'll get that set up for you. The Vote Builder training that James at the Delco Dems provided for us will also help orient you to Vote Builder and completing your worksheet. That training was recorded and is available upon request. So one thing I would ask you to do when you're looking at your precinct data is to have an inquisitive mindset. Start looking at the data with your own questions in mind. Do you feel like you have an idea of voter makeup in your precinct? And then start looking at the data to see if it actually confirms your impressions. You can start with the overall total. How many voters are in your precinct? How many households are in your precinct? How many Democrats do you have? What is the breakdown between independents and Republicans? Keep in mind that just because someone is a Democrat registered does not mean that they still vote Democratic. The same is true of Republicans. There could be rhinos in your precinct, and that stands for Republican in name only. This is still the case for some people who live here in Ridley Township who were told that they had to be Republican to get a job with the county, or some people even say to get your trash picked up. These are real feelings that people have, and it's still something that's happening currently. I have a Democrat in my precinct who was at the January 6th insurrection. I make a note to not send him materials. Generally speaking, the majority of people with a party affiliation likely identify with that party. Precinct management and connecting with voters will give you a better picture of how people vote. Another thing that you'll want to take note of is how many apartments are in your precinct. So if you're interested in doing literature drops or putting a mailing together and leaving it at people's doorsteps, you may not be able to access apartments. So you'll want to build that into your plan. You'll probably want to put a stamp on some of those and send them that way. I also keep a list of jackpot houses, and this is what I refer to when they have at least 3 or more Democrats. There are some houses that have like 5 to 7. So those are really good ones to hit if you need some signatures for a petition or even turning out the vote. So here's a sample of what my precinct looks like 6-1. We have almost about 1,500 voters. We have 820 doors. And then this shows you the breakdown between Republicans, Democrats, and independents. We have 7 Libertarian as well in the mix. And then when you look at voter age, but not registered, we do have some information in Vote Builder, which we can orient you to later. And looking at, I just started looking at data. I was trying to have that inquisitive mindset. And I thought to myself, I want to know how many people didn't vote in the presidential election. There were 84 Democrats in my area that did not vote. So these are things that you can, just play around with in Vote Builder just to get a better idea of who is in your precinct, but how often they are voting. So just definitely go in there and check out some different tabs there. And then I also in here put how many Democratic apartments there were, PO boxes, things like that, and there were 91. So that ends up being a significant mailer. So I want to take a moment and talk about the importance of a growth mindset. We should always be thinking of growing our community. How do we find voters, volunteers, resources? How do we ask for donations to fund our initiatives? When we grow, we essentially make the work easier for all of us. More volunteers on election day generally means more voters and a positive experience. More volunteers canvassing means more support and, dare I say, fun. More donations means more potential to reach voters and elect Democrats. And it makes a difference if you can go out with a buddy and you're not doing something alone. So here are some ways that we've thought about growing influence and familiarity with our precincts. First and foremost, observe your precinct. Have an idea and familiarity about it. Walk it if you're able. It will get you familiar with the neighborhood. You'll likely build connection with others who are out and about. You'll be able to take note of lawn signs and home sales, as mentioned earlier. You'll also get a sense of accessibility to houses. So if you're doing a literature drop, there might be certain fences that you can't access, or there might be dogs. So maybe those are the ones that you throw a stamp on and put in the mail. Do you have apartment buildings in your area, and are they accessible? You can carry the business cards we provided. So if you strike a conversation with someone, you can share your information and get the word out about the Ridley Dems. And only share the information that you're comfortable with. If you don't want to be contacted by phone, you don't have to put your phone number, maybe just put an email. Think about the activities that you can participate in to connect with others. Maybe it's hosting a meet and greet to get together with a focused group of neighbors who are highly interested in our committee, or voting. As you connect with interested voters, they may want to help you with lit drops and growing the party, and they can even serve as street captains. How will you reach apartment buildings, as we mentioned earlier? Maybe you'll do a mailer, maybe you'll do a phone call, or try to reach them through Facebook. Remember to share any info of interested voters with Margaret Mansfield, who is our subcommittee chair for volunteer outreach. We should be identifying what our volunteers want to do. So if you strike up a conversation with somebody, it would be good to know what kinds of things are they comfortable doing. Do they, want to get their steps in and maybe walk the neighborhood and do some lit drops? Are they interested in talking to voters at the door, and maybe they want to do some canvassing? Maybe they prefer to be on the phone or do texting, or maybe they want to work behind the scenes and do mailings. This is all information that will be helpful to us so that we can reach out with specific opportunities as they arise. The other thing is we can take note if they want some lawn signs to put out in their neighborhood. Another way to connect with voters is to work election day. So if you're able to come and do some greeting at the polls, whether it's for half a day or a full day, this is a great way to connect with voters. And lastly, I would ask that you carry the QR code or keep it handy so that if you ask for donations, people can easily get that information. This is the QR code that our committee person and secretary, Casey Cole, created for us. You can take this with you when asking for donations. I'll even invite you right now to scan it and try it out. And if you're so inclined, to make a donation. There's no donation too small. Some people, myself included, find it hard to ask for money. But donations will help us reach more voters with our mission to turn out voters and elect Democrats. And when you feel aligned with the mission and purpose for using funds, it makes it easier to ask for the money. We'll mainly use the money for mailers to get people to come out and vote. And these mailers certainly work. So I want to share the sample plan that we are working on currently in 6-1. Like I mentioned, we have 3 committee people, myself, Meg, and Ray. Your next mission really is to think about your plan to reach voters. So here's what we've been doing. We completed a literature drop in August, and this was a letter to all the Democrats in our precinct. We started in July to draft the message. We edited it together, and then we printed it. We also met up for ice cream to add some fun to the mix. So you can see that picture there. We hand addressed envelopes, so we split up the work amongst ourselves. We put the house numbers and streets on them. Full addresses and a return envelope were used, or return address were used for apartments that we mailed to. And to date, we have received responses from people. So some people called with questions about voting. Others said they wanted to get more involved. Someone responded as we were finishing up the lit drop, and they even helped us lit drop a few streets. So that was really cool. Another person came to our August meeting, and we have 2 other members that we lit dropped to, and they will be attending our next Ridley Democratic meeting in September. Another shout out for lit drops, a reminder that we got our fantastic committee person Meg through a lit drop, and you too can hit the jackpot with this kind of letter. We're discussing canvassing independence next based on the pro-choice score in Vote Builder. So again, as you're having that inquisitive mindset and looking at the data in Vote Builder, you may come up with different ideas of people that you can target to get out the vote in November. We may also feel out for Republicans who may vote Democratic, particularly some of the rhinos, let's say. And these are some people that we already know, so we may try to build our connections through them to see if we can reach others that would be receptive to our message. There's a list in VoterWeb that will show how many houses may have people who are not registered to vote, and we will pilot that as well. Lastly, mail-in applications will be monitored so that our outreach coincides with that. One example, I was lit dropping before the last election, and was trying to talk to somebody about a potential candidate, and she said, "Oh, I already mailed in my ballot." So you want to be thinking about how mail-in ballots may impact your outreach, and making sure that it's timed right so that you can speak to them about candidates before they vote. The other thing you'll want to do is keep in mind how ambitious this is. So like I said, we have 3 people that are working in 6-1. You do not need to do all of this. At the very least, we would ask that you reach out to the Democrats. Remember that canvassing can be covered through coordinated campaigns. So like Turn PA Blue, we have Leanne's team and Dave DeLoso's team. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, nor should you. Mike's committee for voter engagement will advertise canvases near you. But these are some of the ideas to get you thinking about what you could possibly do. And we will always have people to help you with your ideas. Another thing that you want to keep in mind is that we always coordinate with campaigns. We align with the Ridley Committee goals, and not every precinct needs to model these goals that we've done here. Here are the important dates to keep in mind as you plan outreach to voters. If you're going to try and register voters in your precinct, the deadline is October 24th. Voters can apply for mail-in ballots now through November 1st. I would always recommend that they do it well before November 1st, because that's cutting it way too close, in my opinion. Mail-in ballots will be sent out at some point soon, but we don't yet know the date. So once we do, we'll share it with everyone so that they can plan their mailings accordingly. You want to follow the Vote PA website for the latest info, so you can always be checking that or referring voters to that website as well. This can be an important date if you're lit dropping this mail-in ballot, so just keep tabs on that date. Mail-ins are due on election day by 8. They cannot be postmarked by that date, so they must be received by that date. So that's really important as you're talking to voters, just so that they're aware. They can't just put it in the mail on November 8. It has to be received by that point. And then for in-person voting, it's the game day is November 8th, and the polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. If people are not sure they can make that window, like maybe they're doing a double shift that day, I would encourage them not to leave anything to chance and to vote by mail. It's worth keeping this phrase in mind. Don't let perfection be the enemy of the good. Start somewhere, start today. Take steps towards turning out voters. Do not worry about perfection. Just start. Do what you can and ask for help when you need it. We are all in this together. Here are some things to consider if your plan includes a lit drop or mailing. Many of our committee people do this in their precinct, and it's highly valuable. If you're creating your own letter, please run it by Bella, our chair. We need to ensure our messaging aligns with the Ridley Committee and that any dates or important details are accurate. For notes on lit dropping, you can leave literature in door slots, the screen door, behind the mailbox, or under a doormat if it's windy but dry out. I would always recommend checking the weekly weather forecast so you can plan what days you're actually going to go out and do a lit drop. And check the hourly forecast the day you plan to go out. One day I started on a Saturday and it was a beautiful sunny day, and all of a sudden out of nowhere it seemed to change. I was not even in my mind thinking that it would possibly rain that day. And I'm thinking probably some of my letters may have gotten wet if I put them under a mat. So I would check the weekly and the hourly forecast on the day that you go out. One thing that you have to make sure you don't do is to never put literature in a mailbox. It is against federal law to put anything in a mailbox that doesn't have paid postage on it. Hand addressing envelopes adds a personal touch. So in our mailing, we did the name and the street number and street name just so that we could easily deliver and kind of group them by street. Cross-check vote by mail data, as we mentioned, because if you're lit dropping, you want to make sure that you're not lit dropping to people who have returned their mail-in ballots already, and that data can be accessed in the databases. Here's some notes on mailings. Return labels can be helpful, especially if you're putting literature in the mail, as return mail will help you update your list for those that have moved, especially in apartments. When writing letters, some committee people will address to the envelope, they'll address it to a person, quote, or current occupant. If you do go this route, you will not get as much returned mail. So some of our committee people intentionally leave that out. They'll just address it to the person that they think lives there. They will not write or current occupant. And that way, when if someone has moved, the mail gets returned to them, and that's like a clue for them to update their information and their lists. Another thing just to keep in mind, try to make it as fun as possible. With enough planning and notice, you can invite friends or fellow committee members over to help you assemble letters. Invite friends, committee members, or neighbors to help you do the lit drop as well. And one thing that we like to do is we go out for ice cream afterwards. So always have something to celebrate your accomplishments and your goals. Remember that you have resources to draw from. So you have all the committee people that have kind of been around the block before and have some ideas about things to help. James at the Delco Dems tailored a presentation for us that gives basics on how to use Vote Builder. If you have questions or you need that link, let us know. Bella created a very informative video on understanding Ridley Township. It's called Ridley 101. Definitely worth looking at. Turn to your fellow committee members, as I mentioned, for guidance or advice. Consider getting a precinct buddy who can serve as a mentor or support, or someone that you can bounce your ideas off of. We have sample letters that you can use or tweak, and those are available upon request. And lastly, I would recommend checking out the National Democratic Training Committee. It's not the same as the DNC. It's a separate organization. It's at traindemocrats.org. They have a lot of different free trainings on a variety of topics, including some on Vote Builder. So I would highly recommend them, and they are free. So here are some follow-up next steps to be considering for your precinct plan. First and foremost, start exploring your precinct data if you haven't already. It's really interesting. And use the worksheet as a guide. Try to complete it and just get a sense of your demographics. Consider the ways that you want to reach out to voters and plan out your ideas. What's going to make the most sense for you? Plan some dates and times to explore your precinct, to connect with Dems. What kinds of things might you want to do? And as I mentioned, celebrate at the end for completing the task. Consider how you want to document your progress. So for me, I keep notes in Excel. So anytime I have a good interaction, and every now and then I have somebody that says they're not interested in, talking about politics, I make notes on all of that so that I can keep that information for the next time I go and canvass. It's all about relationship building, and you're not going to get all the results that you want in one day. This is stuff that you do over time. So it's good to keep notes so that you can remember everything. And I would say if you have any significant votes, like people who I mentioned say, I want no part of this, which is very rare, but it does happen. You might want to make a note about that in Vote Builder so that other people using the data can have an idea of people who may not be interested in engaging. And then on the flip side, you have some people that might be very enthusiastic. The hugs and kisses here is a joke. We haven't had that. But there are certainly people that are enthusiastic and interested in getting involved, and that is worth noting. You may want to also consider, as a next step, identifying a precinct buddy or mentor. That could be somebody within the committee or maybe someone else that's in the Democratic Party. Here are some general precinct management goals. Basically, we want to make sure we're getting the word out about Ridley Democrats and that you're introducing yourself to neighbors and building those relationships and familiarity. We want to make sure November 8th is top of mind for everyone. This is a very important date, and it's all about getting people to the polls that day. If you're thinking about that growth mindset, if there's someone that's really interested in, the conversation about politics and election day and electing Democrats, we want to try to make note of that and see if they'll come help do what we're doing. It could be that they want to knock doors with you. They might want to consider being a committee person with you in your precinct. Think about connecting them with Margaret so that we can track that. And, if they're interested in donating, we want to make sure Casey's aware of that as well. All right, here's some housekeeping items. Just first and foremost, if you need access to Vote Builder or Voter Web, let us know so that we can set you up in both of those databases. Please follow us on Facebook if you're not already. Like our posts, and please share our posts that you enjoy. Take photos and send any photos of Democratic activity to me. I will post it on Facebook. Just remember that visual communication is very compelling and inspiring. As you can see in this picture here, we have State Representative Leanne Kruger with some of our committee people canvassing. If I were to just write text and say, join us for knocking doors, it's just not as exciting as having a visual. So just please keep that in mind and just take pictures if people are willing, and let them know that you'd be posting them on Facebook. We have an in-kind donation form. So if you are so inclined to use your own postage or buy envelopes, whatever you are contributing in any way, make sure that you request that we send you the link to the in-kind donation form so that we can track your generosity and your contributions. If you cannot afford to do the mailing, but you want to do a mailing, then we can look into funding it as well. So just check in with us prior to making any purchases, and we have a reimbursement form that we can track that information there. I'll conclude with two quotes from President Barack Obama. Democracy works, but we gotta want it, not just during an election season, but all the days in between. And that would speak to our building Rome that, we're laying the bricks to the foundation every single day. And democracy isn't a spectator sport. For democracy to work, we all have to roll up our sleeves and get involved in the process. So I want to just take this moment to thank you for your participation, your time and energy, and your ideas. Every member of this team is valued for their contributions to ensuring victory on November 8th. Thank you so much.